Okay, I just wanted to make this short video in a reference to a future video that's being made about Michael Afton. I want to quickly talk about why Five Nights at Freddy's 3 breaks the FNaF timeline and the potential possibilities on how to fix it. This will be looking at three main aspects of the game: the date in which it takes place, the mini-games inside the game itself, and a completely different game in the franchise that interacts with FNaF 3. And if it sounds like I'm talking fast, it's because I am. This is a very long topic that I will possibly expand on in the future, but for right now, I just want to vent my frustrations to you. But I'll slow down a little bit until we get into the really large discussion. Let's start with the time period that this game takes place. The Steam description for Five Nights at Freddy's 3 clearly establishes that Fazbear Frights opens 30 years after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closes, which alone doesn't cause many anomalies in the timeline. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 happens in 2023, 30 years after FNaF 1, confirmed by FNaF 6, with HRY 223, or Henry 2023. But why exactly this causes a complication is the game's sister location. I feel like most people are aware of the theory called Molten MCI, and it's made pretty obvious by Henry's dialogue that this is the case. To quickly interject, I have noticed a growing minority in the FNaF community who seem to believe that Molten MCI is not correct, even though it definitely is. This video is not about Molten MCI, so I won't be going into that topic here, but just know Molten MCI is correct. If you disagree, I'll probably make a video about it another day. Right now, I want to talk about FNaF 3. The Insanity speech also makes clear that William got this remnant from the events of Follow Me, which is seen in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Oh, wait a minute, Follow Me is implied to happen after the events of FNaF 1, both by the fact that in the novels William dies after the events of FNaF 1 would have happened, but then also the fact that the kids have no reason to attack Michael Afton in FNaF 1 if William's already dead. As seen in the Twisted Ones, the kids don't attack at all after they kill William in the Silver Eyes. So that means that Sister Location, a company that is definitely partly owned by Fazbear Entertainment because of some obvious copyright law around the characters of Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy, as well as the name Sister Location itself. A sister location being two companies, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals, that are both owned by the same parent company, which in this case would be Fazbear Entertainment. Now you might argue that it says Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which solves our problem, as that would mean anything that doesn't have the words Freddy Fazbear Pizza in the name doesn't count. But that leads us open to a multitude of other things that we now need to keep in mind moving forward. This means that any locations that aren't a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza directly can open in between the time span of Five Nights at Freddy's 1 to Five Nights at Freddy's 3. This can even include things like Freddy's Fantasy Water Park from the new Tales story Submechanophobia. While this doesn't necessarily break the timeline, as I mentioned many times before this, there's multiple loopholes, it's fine, it does make it so the 30 years rule isn't really a 30 years rule, because there's going to be technicalities such as Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals and Freddy Fantasy's Water Park that don't fit under the circumstances given in the FNaF 3 description, making it way easier to break the timeline of FNaF just with Five Nights at Freddy's 3, as you could technically use this to argue that the events of Follow Me happened before the events of FNaF 1, even though that is highly unlikely. The next huge problem with Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is the minigames within it and when exactly they happen. The minigames I'm referring to particularly are the Happiest Day minigames. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 was meant to be the end of the story, but then it got expanded. This was especially confusing considering Happiest Day was supposed to be the freeing of the kids, but as seen in Five Nights at Freddy's 6, that was clearly not the case, as both Charlotte and the MCI kids survived. And Cassidy is even more implied to survive past that date even, going into UCN as well as Princess Quest. We know for a fact it can't happen until at least after FFPS because the puppet is still around inside of Lefty and she passes on in the Happiest Day minigames. But wait, if we assume that Stitchline Games is canon to the game's timeline, which many people happen to believe, that means it also can't happen until after the events of the Stitch Rafe Stingers, as the puppet is still around inside the puppet mask to defeat the Afton amalgamation. What this means is that because of the expansion of the story, Five Nights at Freddy's 3 Happiest Day has been expanded past its original point to an insignificant amount of time forward, possibly even after Security Breach. And then there's the biggest problem with Five Nights at Freddy's 3's story, and the thing that has been stopping me from writing this video fully and starting recording for the past 3 weeks now. That thing being FNaF World, the absolute bane of my existence. Let's start off with something that should be incredibly obvious. Five Nights at Freddy's World is incredibly meta. The game literally references itself being a game and references Scott being its creator. Now the reason why this is confusing is that the clock ending in FNaF World is a direct direct reference to Five Nights at Freddy's 3 in the way that we access the Happiest Day minigames. This is made obvious by the reference to 395-248, as well as the fact that all of the clues appear in the same order. Now this is where it gets complicated. That means that the story of this game is somehow important to the story of Five Nights at Freddy's 3, and an unknown character being spoken to by two yellow eyes is somehow the key to Happiest Day, who needs to go out and find the pieces. If we only look at the dialogue and nothing else, it is implied that the yellow eyes is the Fredbear plush and the person being spoken to is the bite victim, as there's references to the lines in FNAF 4 in this dialogue. But as I already established, FNAF World is a meta game, so how is that supposed to work? Bite victim is an in-universe character. Unless some sort of arcade theory is correct, which there's no evidence for, this game isn't even traditionally canon, so bite victim being spoken to in this context doesn't even guide us in any direction. Is he meant to be finding the pieces? Scratch that. If he's not finding the pieces, who is it supposed to be? Is it the puppet? Is it the guard of FNAF 3? Is it the player itself? All four of these options have a logic to them, and any number of them could be correct. If it's the bite victim, he has connections to the minigames of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 through his death, and he was sent out by the Fredbear plush to find the pieces to put himself back together. But as I already mentioned, there's a problem with this assumption. Five Nights at Freddy's world is established to be meta, and not directly in the same timeline as the core FNAF games, while still being canon in a separate meta, jokey way, as it's a commentary on the series, meaning the character being the bite victim doesn't make much sense as he's an in-universe character. And what about the puppet? The puppet is the one to put together the Happiest Day, and is one to place the cake down on the final Happiest Day minigame. While yes, the puppet does play a role in putting the Happiest Day together, there's no evidence that they are the person being spoken to in this cutscene, and it runs into the same meta problems that the bite victim does. What about the guard of FNAF 3? Again, runs into the problem of being meta, but he directly interacts with the pieces that are seen in the Follow Me minigames, heavily connecting him to this scene. Does that mean it's the player? It's the meta player of FNAF 3 being spoken to in FNAF World to find the pieces? Would this mean that the actual guard of FNAF 3 would still have to interact with those pieces? Or would it be meta? Are you exhausted? Because I'm exhausted. I have been trying to deal with this for the past 3 weeks. I think I've come to a conclusion in my video that I find satisfying, but I know personally from talking with many theorists in my past that a lot of people aren't going to agree with me, and I am very okay and aware of that. I just wanted to notify you in advance. With that being said, I'll catch you in the next video. See you on the flip side later. And while I would love to segue off here, I have some I have some unfortunate news. So I may have potentially maybe scrapped this video. Sorry. Don't worry, it's getting replaced with something else that's like way cooler. But yeah, the mic video isn't gonna happen. Sorry. It's just I had a better idea, so I'm gonna do that instead. And I had either the option of recording this and telling you guys, or just not releasing it. And I already finished editing it, so I chose to do this instead. Please forgive me. I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment. Okay, I'll see you on the flip side. Later.